Hello. We're live.
All right. We are live. We have Kohlton Holsapple joining us here in just a second. Let me get the little slides that I put together for this and just grant StreamYard access to all my files and sensitive data in order to pull that from my Google Drive. Um, And yeah, so basically, what this stream is, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Crusades, and we have Kohlton Holsapple, who is the CEO of a game studio, indie game studio, that is putting together an awesome-looking game about it's its own game, but it's set in the Third Crusade.
Yeah, the setting.
So let me add this. It's just cool art right from the
right away. Killer visuals.
And yeah, as you guys, so yeah, we have the CEO of Credenzio Studios joining us. We'll talk a little bit about Crusades history. You feel free if you have questions about this game. I know it's getting a lot of hype lately, so maybe you already heard about it. But if you have questions, just feel free to throw those in the chat, and we'll get going. And please submit some super chats throughout the show. It helps support us. Thank you to our Patreon supporters, especially William, Benissimo, Kevin Lee, Nicholas Seiler, and Omri. You keep the channel running. And yeah, if you guys notice too, we have I don't even think this will work. Here we go.
Oh, thank you.
Speaking of art, Joe, your work is fire.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we have a little super chat goal. So if we get, I think like 10 $5 donations, we'll do a teaser for the next episode at the end of the stream. But I think I actually got to pull up the trailer here because it's not going to work. But honestly, the best way to show you guys this is really just showing you what that trailer looks like, because I feel like I say indie game based on the Crusades, and you're just kind of like, well, that's not necessarily going to be that good. Is it a digitized version of some board game or something? No, it's not. It's pretty great. So let me pull that up. I'll get this playing. Should be about 3 minutes long, and we'll get watching. Okay. Lionhearts Crusade game. What did you guys think about that latest video, by the way, as I'm pulling this up?
Oh, yeah.
The Tlingit versus Russians. Here we go. All right, here it is. Let me pull this up. I'll get this going on the stream. And then we'll get Kohlton on to talk about the game once I get this going. All right. Let me know if the audio works on this too.
You were not born for. You were not born for war. Not for blood, nor for glory. You were born to till the earth, to shape iron, to build a life from quiet things. But the world is fallen, and though it calls you to forget, your God calls you to remember. So shed your name, your home, your yesterday. Not for pride, not for vengeance, but for salvation. for God and God alone. And when you fall, and you will, let it not be in vain. Let all remember that you came willingly, that you bore your cross, that you had faith, even when faith was all you had left. What is a crusader, if not a servant who refuses to forget what he fights for the memory of who he was, and the hope of who he might still become? Now is the time to take up your cross, to answer the call, and fulfill your destiny.
All right. Whatever I can say right now is going to be hard to top. That was just so cool.
Yeah.
So let's meet
epic.
one of the men responsible for what we just saw, for that awesomeness, Kohlton Holsapple.
Hey guys, thanks so much.
Kohlton, how you doing?
Me. Yeah, doing great.
So let's. I kind of want to just jump right into it. I feel like we just maxed out the hype on this stream from that. If you want to, guys, like anytime throughout, I'm just going to throw this ticker on the bottom. The Kickstarter to help realize this project is in the description. I'm not affiliated in any way. I'm not getting any kickback from this Kickstarter. I just want to see it happen. It looks so cool. So Kohlton, why don't you just start out telling us about yourself and then how this project came to happen?
Thanks again so much for having me, guys. Big fan of everything you're doing at your channel. My name's Kohlton Holsapple. I founded Credenzio Studios. We've been working on this project for actually over 10 years. It began over on the Roblox platform, which is where we have a lot of support and fans now, and sort of creating a insane experience for that platform, getting an audience that's kind of counter to the typical Roblox audience. A ton of historical nuts, a ton of people that just love this genre, love this period of history. And now we're making the move to Unreal Engine and Steam, and we're doing a Kickstarter right now. And it's going pretty well. We need as much support as we can. But yeah, I have a background in history. I studied it in college, specifically the Crusades, and I really am trying to bring with my team one of the most authentic representations of this time period in media.
Awesome. So the group, were these people that you personally knew ahead of time, or were you playing Roblox like 10 years ago and then something started to form and you met up with these guys and ended up making this badass trailer a decade later?
If you want like the deep Kohlton Credenzio lore, it started in 2009. So Assassin's Creed came out. I was a kid, and I started an Assassins inspired group on Roblox, except the historical Assassins, which that game's based on. Same time period as Lionhearts, actually. So we draw a lot of inspiration. And we had a massive group, a massive following, and we'd go to war with like these Templar groups. And then eventually like, man, maybe we should just band together and like get all these factions together from this time period and make this like what they call a group genre, like the first of its kind. So we had this game on Roblox where we would come and fight each other. And over the years that evolved, I decided, why don't we do this for real? Let's make this like a real thing. And so we turned it into like a giant multiplayer persistent world with these massive factions vying over territory, a map that's larger than the Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, like just massive world, huge world, active player count with a dedicated community. And, recently, just in the last year, we've been talking about going to Steam and like doing this off platform for a while, but we really just felt like the time was now. So we went out, we got, we got our cinematic, we made our demo, which is free to play on our Kickstarter right now. And we're doing it. We're going to bring this thing to life with Steam and Unreal Engine.
Yeah, it's incredible because watching that trailer, I would have never thought it started out as a Roblox thing to begin with. Because
when I went back and watched the Roblox thing, it was like, it would be like if you saw a really gritty historical action movie or something like that, and now you're seeing the Lego version of it. Yeah, it's like, it is cool. Like you've now made the jump. So, and yeah, the Kickstarter right now is at 79,000 out of $100,000 goal. Is this sort of exceeding some of the expectations?
No, we know there's a huge audience for this, and so we actually don't even think we've scratched the surface of the medieval audience. It's totally massive, and we want to scratch that surface. We want to do as much as we can. So I'm always surprised at how much people love this game. That always is a surprise, and I'm in a state of total gratitude for the support we do have. And it's less the quantity, not to be cliche, but it is the quality. Like people come in and they commit so much to this game and supporting us. So no, it wasn't the top Roblox game player count wise, but it's, we had like the top session time per player on the platform. It was like 40 minutes on a game of like mobile simulators where people log in for 5 minutes on, on their phone in the back of their mom's car, or like on their iPad, right? Like that's incredibly impressive that we were able to accomplish that. People spending hours and hours in our game. And by the way, people that do not play Roblox, people who do not play other Roblox games, that's mostly our players. And one of the biggest issues we've had is like, let's say we're friends, which I hope we can become as we just getting to know each other. But if I was like, hey guys, like I'm playing this game, it's really fun. I explain all the features. You get super hyped, and I'd say, yeah, come on, it's on Roblox. You'd be like, what? Nah, I'm not playing Roblox, right? So, that was kind of a threshold that was really hard for us to overcome because the target audience is on Steam. The target audience is older than Roblox. And so we're going to maintain the Roblox game. We don't intend to take it down. We don't intend to get rid of it because we love that game. We love that audience, and it's its own game. This new game, it's not going to be a one-to-one. There's going to be a lot of differences. There's going to be a lot of improvements. Namely the blocky characters going away would be the biggest one, the visuals. But a lot of other things that over time we've been able to flesh out as we've been trying to, accomplish a very ambitious game, which we did on Roblox, figuring out what works and what doesn't with these really complex player-to-player interactions.
Yeah. Do you mind going into the persistent multiplayer experience aspect? Because I thought when I was reading through it on Steam, I was like, wow, that's really impressive. Like there's going to be no server hopping at all. It's all taking place in just one massive region.
Yeah. So that's the goal. That's like a final product sort of thing. Mm-hmm. We have several stretch goals to get to that point, but really the reason that that's so pivotal for this game is because we want people to be able to traverse the Holy Land and just run into a random raid, run into a caravan being sacked, run into a mining quarry being extracted or something being built. And when you split into multi servers, it kind of takes me out of the experience. I never liked that.
Yeah.
And so if I say, hey, Joe, let's go meet at the Dome of the Rock, I don't have to tell you what the server ID is, right? If I go meet you there, just like in real life, you can find me there. That's one of the coolest elements. On top of that, when you conquer a territory, it persists. So if the Abbasids conquer territory from the Zangids have to take that territory back, or it's going to be Abbasids forever. So like that persistent element is what really makes your actions as a player feel impactful. I don't like calling it an MMO, even though it technically is. It's not really an MMO by genre because there's no quests. There's no like experience and levels. There are in the Roblox game, but we're doing away with that. It's all about ascending this feudal hierarchy. So it's a simulator. It's about, living in this feudal times. You can be a crusader. You can be a Saracen. There's no biases towards one side or the other from the developers. It's what if all the players, or not all the players, but if a lot of players go to the IUBIDs and they just recruit a ton of people and they conquer the whole map, we're not going to stop them, right? Like the players are leading the way. And guess what? Empires are hard to maintain. So the odds of them keeping that is low. And there's going to be revolts and all sorts of things that are going to be stopping them. Or maybe somebody's going to coup the IUBID Sultan and then take over. Maybe he's going to
know you're an assassin at heart. So
that's right.
You have your plans. You're subtly controlling everything.
Yeah, no, we will actually have an assassination mechanic planned as well. So the assassin faction will.
Would that be like? Would you play as an assassin, or could you just send an assassin?
It's its own faction, so the assassins could conquer the map technically too. Yeah, and
is
like
that part of the game, or do you personally send a death threat to whoever's too dominant?
I mean, it's definitely just a part of the how the game functions. So, that's why it can't, when you have a multiplayer game, if players are making an impact, it can't be 100% historically accurate because players are going to do things that you wouldn't. And instead of regulating them, it's like, the Byzantines want to ally the Seljuks, even though they were forsaken enemies, they can, or they could be enemies. I mean, geographically, it's more likely that they'll be enemies, right? Because they're kind of on each other's border and stuff. But, like in the Roblox game, there's like a really strong alliance between the Sicilians and the Hospitallers. There's like a really strong alliance between France and the Byzantines. Cool. And those have lasted years. 16.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that is. So what did that process look like? Is it something that's sort of built up naturally over time as the Roblox community grew, where you're just like, we should add another faction? Did you sit down and read 20 books on this before fully developing your vision for it?
I think the research. I mean, I started this thing when I was like 10. So the research. The research came along with it, right? So when I started to when I was graduating college, I read a bunch of books. The Crusades by Thomas Asperge is a great, comprehensive, I think, fairly unbiased resource of, Crusades 1 through 10. And that's a great place to start if you're looking for an overview. But we're in the Third Crusade specifically. So there's a great primary source just called the Third Crusade. It's hard to get a hold of, but it's actually the perspective. I don't even know. It's hard to even do any deep dive research how we have this awesome, it's a manuscript of a soldier in Richard's army.
Wow.
And you get to read through. It's really, really amazing. And so we've used those as some main primary sources. But as we were talking about before, when you're dealing with 16 factions, the history gets immensely complex. And it's hard for an indie dev studio to fully encapsulate that. So we actually invite our community to help us totally authentically represent that historical faction. So we do our best to do our research, but over time it's been further and further refined. So we're actually at a really good spot right now because we've already done that refinement. So we already have a really good idea of do's and don'ts from a historical level that we're going to continue to refine. But it's honestly a privilege to be working with these players that they are so into their faction's history. They'll just they'll send us all sorts of awesome resources, or they'll volunteer to help, plan some of the outfits out, or, things like that. So it's a very passionate, community driven game.
We have a compliment about our beards. Somebody would like us to resurrect Macedonia. I don't know if they mean Macedonia. And he'll grab his Sarissa. But yeah, all right. So we got a compliment for the beards.
Just a reminder again, we have a super chat goal today. So if we get 8 more, right? 8 more $5 super chats, we'll reveal. We'll give a teaser for our next episode that we're working on.
Yeah. Okay. We got a couple book recommendations here from Iron Chalice, The Knights Templar, A New History. Dan Jones, The Templars is also pretty good. So I kind of wanted to ask, what do you think sets your game apart? I mean, obviously there's the gameplay aspects. You have your own vision there. But what sets your gameplay apart from both other games and movies and TV shows in its depiction of the Crusades, just sort of that world?
Yeah, and quickly while we're on book recommendations, I saw another one in the chat, The Crusades Through Error Buys. I also have read that. That's a great one. To kind of get both perspectives. That's a really good one. But to answer your question, you know, it's difficult whenever you're trying to make any type of game. Game development, I don't think players understand how difficult it is, but it's very difficult. And often with something that's like an MMO, which is very high scope, there aren't really historical MMORPGs. So there are historical fantasy MMORPGs, and they're just straight fantasy RPGs, MMOs. And on top of that, there are plenty of historical single player games, like Kingdom Come Deliverance is a great example, right? But that multiplayer medieval experience, like made by a studio, not like a mod of Bannerlord or something like that, like a truly massive multiplayer experience, it doesn't exist as far as we know. So that's a huge goal for us, because I love Lord of the Rings. It's my favorite book ever. It's my favorite movie ever, right? But
you can see,
yeah, there you go, Rohan, right? So, but like and guess what? Like if whoever has the rights, like if the Tolkien estate was to reach out and said, you want to make a Lord of the Rings video game, that'd be like the dream come true for me. Like that's my lifetime goal, right?
If you just add orcs as a faction in this game and just watch what happens.
Basically there, right? Yeah.
DLC.
Well, it's always in the Holy Land.
It's always tempting because people, like a lot of people will ask for that. But we've been like, no, we don't want to do that. We want this to feel like a historical experience. And actually, you can be creative in a fantasy environment, but I think you have to be more creative in a historical environment. You have to do more research, and you have to work within the margins of what's there. So one of the things we're doing is, like, I hate saying it's a soft magic system, but just it's through faith and prayer, it's filling that role. So it's not magic, but it's filling that passive role that actually did exist. And it was a huge part of, obviously, the Crusaders' motivations, as well as the Saracens' motivations. And so one of the ways we want to deliver that historical authenticity is by actually, instead of just checking that religious box, like, oh yeah, there's religion in the game, but it doesn't really mean anything, really fully and authentically representing what that would mean for the life of a Crusader or somebody living in the Holy Land, where that was a huge part of their entire motivational systems and what they were doing for both sides, for every faction. So things like that allow us to really get creative and deliver something. It feels fresh and unique. Like there's just, as soon as you start looking, you're like, oh yeah, nothing like this is out there. It has elements from other games. We take elements from EVE Online with their persistent economy. We're inspired by Assassin's Creed, but that's a single player game, and it's way more towards historical fantasy. I mean, you can like assassinate the Pope and contact aliens, and you know what I mean. Like, so it's
Sam, you can't do that in this.
Well, you might be able to.
No aliens, come on.
Not the alien. But
I'm glad you mentioned that aspect though, because actually one of the things I wanted to ask you was, how much does the religious hierarchy play into this? Because I know there are some more revisionist takes on the Crusades, which just kind of try to impose a more modern mindset onto, what were in effect pilgrims back then. I mean, they were leaving the city barefoot and stuff, and, in reverence for God. And it's so easy sometimes to just break it down and say, oh, maybe it was just motivated by greed or this or that or that. So I did notice, on your Steam page, you did say religion is a key aspect to this. So it's interesting how it is. It's not like you said, you're checking off a box, but it's something you have to live throughout the game.
Yeah. I mean, I love talking about that. And this is something my Crusades professor in high school was, adamant about. Like, people try to put, like a very modernist lens, on the Crusades to describe motivations. First of all, whenever you're trying to collectivize motivations for individuals, it doesn't, you got to be careful with what you say, because you can easily be proven wrong. Of course, I'm sure there were some Crusaders motivated by greed, but let's just look at the facts. To go on crusade was extremely expensive. So if you weren't a peasant or a serf that could just drop everything and just, like you said, barefoot walk across the Holy Land following Peter the Hermit or something like that, you had to sell your estate. And a lot of times, like, people think, okay, a lot of times it was like some of the lesser lords in a house trying to go win renown and stuff. And although that's true, it was also a great honor to go on crusade. This was like thought of as doing a charity. This was like a civil service. So this was how you would be giving back to Christendom, right? Is to go on crusade, go protect pilgrims in the Holy Land. Obviously there's a ton of propaganda about what the Seljuk Turks were doing. They were actually doing that. It was propagandized. But from their perspective, and there's even a lot of theological works that were written, like Just War by Augustine, things like that, to justify their behavior. But this was a religious act generally, right? To take up the cross was a religious act. I mean, Richard, who's my favorite character in history, he lost everything, man. Like, you know what I mean? It was not, by the way, he won a lot of renown, and that was great. But, he ended up ultimately lost his life, but, basically his associate Philip II of France betrayed him when he was gone. John, his brother, was messing things up in England while he was gone, and he was still doing and he got this close to taking the city back of Jerusalem. And although his experience isn't a typical experience for a crusader because he was a king, I think as soon as you start studying these figures, it doesn't really make sense to plug in any motivation other than what they were saying. Like, okay, this is what they said. This is what makes sense. So if you want to say it was something else, that's fine. But now the impetus is on you to provide that research. Now the impetus is on you is to say, okay, this is why. It's like, all right, tell me why they wanted to basically risk dying to even just get there, sell all their belongings, very little chance of success, very little chance of gaining anything. Go ahead. Tell me why. I mean, I'm all ears. And of course, every individual's motivation is going to be unique. But in a general sense, I've rejected that through what we've studied and what we've seen.
Yeah, I think I like the point too also of trying to warn against collectivizing certain things, because that's a lot of what we do. That sort of ethos is what we bring to a lot of the subjects that we cover, because it's very easy to say the Vikings did X. Okay, what do we mean by the Vikings? Do we mean the people that are going and raiding? Do we mean everybody that lives in Scandinavia, the women, or, whatever it was? And I would think that just by common sense would apply to the Crusades too. So maybe the initial impetus is entirely religious, but there are things that happen along the way that are motivated by, you're pillaging Constantinople for greed, right? You are
Fourth Crusade's a great example. They wanted to go on crusade. The Venetians basically manipulated them. They got into a bunch of debt with Venetians, and the Venetians used the Crusaders to settle a debt with the Byzantines or the Eastern Romans. And so you go to St. Marco's in Venice, which I've been, and it's just littered with constant artifacts from the Hagia Sophia and Constantinople. And you're like, man, this looks like an Eastern Orthodox church. What's going on here? Oh, this is all stolen. It's like, that doesn't seem like the original motivation for this. So,
well, and I also think too, once you're getting into wars and stuff, there's a point at which, whatever side is involved is going to be consumed by hatred for their enemies or something like that. So, when you're getting to the point where you're burning down either a church or a mosque with people inside of it, you're just like, that part wasn't about the initial goal. And
not to mention the pogroms that they would do on the way. They would slaughter massive groups of Jewish people in Europe on their way. We're not including that element because it doesn't contribute to the game, and it's not something we want to glorify. We don't want to glorify the war or the religious conflicts at all, actually. And we found, despite what you might think, the community, we have Muslims, we have Christians, we have everybody, right? They actually get along quite well, and they have a lot of respect. And it doesn't necessarily mean what faction you're going to join. Like, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you're going to be a crusader. We have Christians that join the Muslim factions because there's opportunities there. Like, the leader's getting deposed, there's an opportunity to rank up there quickly. And then they fall in love with these factions. And I think that's really cool. And it gives people a lot of respect for, these different cultures. We're 1,000 years detached from these events. We obviously don't have, whether or not like you're a Christian or a Muslim today, you're not an Abbasid. You're not a member of Richard's army. So like in real life. So when you're role playing, you're role playing. And that's an important element that I like to distinguish. And we don't want to glorify these things, but we do want people to immerse themselves in just a very exciting era of history. It's just
exactly.
And one of the reasons I love it. Yeah, one of the reasons I love it is because there's so many different factions coming in, right? There's a ton of games set in Europe, and those are awesome, and I love that. And there are differences between England and France, but the difference between England and France and the differences I guess when you compare the differences between England and France and between the differences between England and Ayyubids, it's a big discrepancy. Like Europeans do have a shared culture, right? And and so when you actually start mixing intercontinental conflicts, like you get people that are thousands of miles apart traveling to fight, right? It's like when Alexander's army got to India, and they're like, oh my God, there's elephants. Like what's going, I mean, like I've never seen people that like look like this or, talk like this. It gets, it gets really interesting. And that's one of the biggest motivations for doing this is it's a cultural clash. It's a melting pot.
Yeah, no, I
of
love
these
that.
Cultures.
That you just summed up our channel. I mean, so much of our stuff is different cultures meeting. I always loved sort of the age of, well, I guess just like post 1492 era, where you get all of these really distant cultures that all descend from the same place, but because of the land bridge breaking up, they've been isolated for 20,000 years or 15,000 years. And it's like, so now we have our own gods and our own dynasties, own language, own value systems. Let's see what happens if, we meet, and how do we reconcile those differences? What misperceptions or perceptions do we form about the other side? And I was just looking at a map of the Third Crusade before we jumped on. It was just like so interesting to me to think, like, I think was Richard up in like York, and then he passes through like London, and so the crusade is going like overland through England, and then eventually makes its way around Spain, and you're just entire army of Englishmen just.
It depends if you believe the propaganda about Richard that like he never stepped foot on England and he was actually French and he would have sold London. Certainly his army. I mean, I don't necessarily buy into that, but no, I mean, they would use Messina as a launching point, Italy, like as a way to sail. That was the best way to do it. The people that marched didn't typically have a good time. They had to deal with the Byzantines and the Eastern Romans who didn't like them very much and didn't like the fact that there was a massive Western army on their doorstep, despite what their intentions might have been. And somebody in the chat mentioned, the Byzantines, even the Third Crusade, they were more allied with the Ayyubids than the Crusaders because they couldn't trust the Crusaders, and rightfully so with what would happen. But yeah, you get some awesome, and we even have the Kingdom of Sicily in the Third Crusade on Roblox, or I'm sorry, the Lionhearts game on Roblox, because it's such an important part of the story is how they actually got there.
I was wondering, how much does the real world history beyond just the setting and the style factor into the game itself?
A lot. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it determines, like you said, it determines the style and the culture and the look. But just the geographical and archaeological like setting is what defines the world, right? And so players can, edit what the city of Jerusalem might look like if you're the Lord of Jerusalem, but it's still Jerusalem, right? And like the Dome of the Rock is there, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Holy Sepulchre and stuff like that. And so the setting is the historical world. What the players do is up to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the 16 factions, it just sounds so interesting. You got the Unreal Engine, everything looks beautiful. But what we're talking about, like these distant people meeting. I mean, imagine you grow up in a little like hamlet in England as a peasant, and even just as you're traveling there, what is Constantinople like to you? I mean, how breathtaking is that? And then all of a sudden, you're nearing Jerusalem and you're fighting a Seljuk Turk, and even the other way around. A Seljuk Turk is now like, who the hell is this guy?
Exactly. Yeah. The other perspective, super interesting. Like we talked about the Crusaders' motivations, but for, the Muslims and the Saracens and the Turks, obviously the Christians, believe that's their land, but it's been Muslim land for hundreds of years at this point. Right. And so to them, they're like, man, we're just getting invaded. You know what I mean? Like, so that's a pretty good motivation. Stopping an invasion is, you don't even need the religious stuff on top of that to motivate, but they're invading and they don't believe what we believe. There's a lot of motivations on both sides.
So talk to us about the process. Like you had the Roblox game. What was the process from saying we're going to just build something, I guess, basically from the ground up in Unreal Engine using sort of like the bones of the previous Roblox gameplay as the framework?
Well, people have been telling us to do that from like the beginning. So it's always been a seed. They're like, man, this game would look good on Steam. Like this would be a good, because it's never really fit that Roblox archetype. So I do invite everybody to play the game on Roblox, despite it being on Roblox. I think if you like medieval games, you can have a lot of fun on that game. If you once you get past the graphics and the blockiness, we still built a beautiful experience. The motivation was just to find that audience and to do things we couldn't do on Roblox. You can do a lot of things on Roblox, almost anything, but you have to do a lot of workarounds. And the engine's not really built for something like this. We're basically one of a kind on this platform. And although there's some other ambitious games and stuff, they never really pan out because the platform's just not built for that. So to have an audience after all these years, a dedicated audience, a loyal audience, have this much support on the Kickstarter really just shows how dedicated our audience is, how excited they are for us to move. And again, like we still want to maintain this Roblox game. We still want to keep it up. And if somebody doesn't want to come, that's fine. They can keep playing the Roblox game, but we hope to find a lot more players and people like you two and your guys' audience that are ready to move this thing onto Steam.
I know in our audience we have a lot of kind of Total War and Bannerlord fans, so kind of fans of the combat and the battles and stuff. Have you guys fleshed out ideas around that too, like commanding armies or sieges and stuff as well?
So there's a ton of army commanding games for single player, and they're awesome, and I love them. And I'm actually an RTS junkie, so believe it or not, I love like Age of Empires 2, was the first game I ever played, and StarCraft 2, which isn't medieval, but I just love RTS. I love commanding stuff. It becomes about 20 times more complicated when you are doing it with people. And that means you got to be coordinated. That means you have to be skilled. That means you have to deal with a bunch of people yelling in voice chat, and you have to command people. And if you're chaotic and you're not a good leader, it's not going to work. That's why the goal of the game is not to become the king, because many people are not going to want to be king and not suited. So it's decentralized command. So if you become a lord, you can command your own retinue. It could just be some friends. You're still serving a duke or a king, and you're commanding in that army. But to become a commander, you have to earn it. This is a meritocracy. Not everybody can just come in and start commanding armies. And so that is a more hardcore element. But the casual gameplay on the lower end is still very fun because you're still fighting. You're still engaging in the economy. You could bake bread for your kingdom. You could collect crops. You could make swords. You could do all sorts of things, right? Or you could be a priest or just fight in battles. So on the lower end, this might just feel like Chivalry 2. I'm going to help fight this battle, and that's all I'm doing. Once you get to that late game, if you decide to enter that hyper competitive political sphere, well, you better be ready, right? And luckily, it's not going to take 40 hours of your week because we have stuff like the shadow system that allows players to basically exist in the world even when they go offline. So when you log off, your character is still in the world, because you think about it, people don't log off in real life. So if you're going to have a player-run world, you need the players' characters to still be there. So the goal for this game is to be 0 NPCs. Everybody is a player-run character, even if that player is currently offline.
So you could say make swords while I'm sleeping or something? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And, if you run out of materials, you got to stock it. So it's not like you can just leave it like that for months and it'll just keep doing everything, because it's economy. You need to get the resources. You need to make sure everything's working. But that definitely is a plugin that just allows this game to work on a level that it probably couldn't if we didn't have that.
So what does the demo look like right now? And then do you have sort of a timeline for adding other features? Or I don't know if there's a one day where you're like, this is definitely the proper launch this day.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's really far off as far as being able to predict a date. The demo is a bare minimum visual. So it's just showing people, hey, we can work with Unreal Engine. This is what the world could look like. It looks a lot worse than it will look, but I think it looks pretty good. And it's, again, it's not going to be single player graphics. And we actually, you guys are artists. So we inspired our game. We want it to look like a painting. So we basically, there's so many famous paintings where like, it'd be so fun to like look like you're in a historical painting when you're playing. So it's not stylized, but it's not hyper realistic dark, because we want the world to be bright like it actually was. We want there to be colors. We want it to feel immersive. And also that's going to help with the performance and the fidelity, as far as when you're walking around the world, there's 50 other players. It's a lot more performance heavy than it would be in a single player game like Assassin's Creed. So you might be able to get those ultra realistic graphics in a single player game, but we're basically saying, no, we're not going to have ultra realistic dark graphics, but we're going to have really beautiful an artistic style that allows you to perform better. And just honestly, I get sick of the dark style. Like I love Elden Ring. I love those games, but I just like after a few hours, I'm like, man, oh, this is just so gloomy. Like I don't want to be here anymore.
It reminds me of let me see. I just shared a meme in the History Dose Discord the other day. It's like medieval world, and it was all right. Let's add the medieval filter, and then everyone's sad. Like, I feel like that's so much of what happens. Like the last
Ridley
duel,
Scott likes the blues.
It was just like let's throw a big blue filter over everything. I'm like,
absolutely.
Was there no sunny days back then? We didn't have the sun.
I was looking at pictures from Ridley Scott's recent Napoleon screenshots, then compared to the 1970s Waterloo, and they were doing Waterloo and the other one too. And in Ridley Scott's, it looks like it's almost nighttime and there's a thunderstorm overhead. In the 1971, it's sunny. There's mud. There's green grass and stuff.
Yep.
I'm glad you're doing that, because it's great hearing you say you want it to look like kind of an old world painting.
Exactly.
Because for me, that's always been my inspiration with art, is like kind of romantic era artists. And then one of my favorite games visually is Assassin's Creed Origins. And I remember seeing from the art director, they referenced a bunch of 19th and 20th century paintings of Egypt. And they said, we're not going for, like dead on realism of how it's going to look, but we're giving you the style from these like painterly images and stuff.
Yeah, that's like one of my, I don't love all the Assassin's Creed recent games, but Origins is like really good.
That captured something though that I feel like we try to capture a lot in this channel. We make the art as accurate as possible, but whether it's the music or the way that I choose to narrate or write a part of the script, it's like there's something beyond just what's on screen,
right?
When you're talking about something, and there should be, maybe it's the same way with your game as well, but there was sort of an awe or sublime sense that people had when they saw a magnificent cathedral or they beheld some city. And so capturing something like that, using the techniques that we have, whether it's music or the way a camera pans up like it does in your trailer, it's like there's something that is actually more faithful to the subject matter to be able to capture something that people would have felt at the time.
Absolutely. And I think we actually did a great job of that in the Roblox game. Like it's very colorful. And once you get it's hard to get past the blockiness, but once you do, like you kind of love it. Like you kind of, because it's just like, even like the uniforms, like they're so detailed and aesthetic. And it's such a vibrant game. Like it feels alive when you're with those players. And I just want to bring that to Unreal, because I feel like that's going to be so awesome for people to go inside a historical world. First of all, I think playing with friends and playing in multiplayer is a much more enriching experience generally than single player. And I love single player games, but I think the level of enrichment that comes with like a player to player interaction is just so much higher. And I almost equate like a single player game. It's like watching a movie. It's like you get a bunch of, you have fun, but like, man, wouldn't it be great to like watch a movie with a bunch of friends and like be in the movie and like be interacting and like have a chance to shape that world. And that's kind of, maybe not the best analogy, but it is an analogy for, the difference between these multiplayer and single player games. Cause a lot of people are like, man, I wish this was single player. And I get that. I really do. But I do feel like the single player medieval world is already captured. And it's done in beautiful ways. It's Kingdom Come Deliverance, so many other titles, that I really want to provide something unique for multiplayer players. And I want to bring a lot of those single players along. I say, hey, give this a try, because this is not like a typical MMO. This is not WoW. This is not like this other stuff. And we're trying to bring a lot of the things that people love about single player experiences into this.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. You were pitching it well, and the trailer was so cool, and I just feel like once people get in and they choose their faction, they're probably going to get really hooked on this, and you get some sense of progress. I kind of want to take a step back and just, for people, we're kind of throwing a bunch of terms at people. It's, persistent and MMO or semi MMO and historical. So if somebody joins this game, let's say we have the full game, it's produced. Where do they start? What's their goal? Like day one in the game, what does it look like?
Well, what do you want to do?
I want to become an assassin.
Great. Okay, perfect. So there are 3 branches in the game. Okay. So you can join a kingdom, you can join a military order. Those are the 2 types of factions, and the factions have branches of the society that makes it work. There's the military branch, there's the trade branch, and there's the religious branch. Each component is essential for the kingdom to thrive. You can have an awesome military. If you don't have the awesome equipment from the trade, you're done. If you don't have the passive buffs from religion, you're done, right? So each component is essential. They're not equally essential. You don't need a perfect distribution, if that makes sense. And players can actually go into multiple paths, right? You can become a deacon in the church while also being a knight and also being a baker. You can do all those things, right? But you can't be the duke and the pope, right? You can't, you know what I mean? So at a certain level, it isolates. So you want to be an assassin, you choose assassins as your starting faction. And you'd start as a low rank in the assassins. And you'd most likely be helping them participate in the trade. So you'd start as like a serf, which isn't a perfect term for the assassins. We baked these tiers, the initial tiers for like a Western faction, but we're going to be including new images, new tiers and names. So I'm just using Western terms, but it'll translate. So you'd start as a serf. You'd probably be collecting crops very briefly, which would allow you to gain favor and ascend up that feudal hierarchy. Where you spend those favor points is up to you. If you want to go into the religious, you want to become an acolyte, you could do that. If you want to become a peasant and start working in a trade guild, you can do that. If you want to become I think the first one, it's not squire, but it's page. If you want to become a page in the military, you can do that. Okay. So it depends on what you want to do. You could do all 3, but where are you going to start first? Or do you want to just start, instead of diversifying, do you want to just go right into military? I want to become a knight as fast as possible. I don't care about other stuff. You can do that. But the core mechanic of the game, the core loop, to use a game development term, is to gain favor so you can ascend up the feudal hierarchy and gain awesome rewards as you ascend.
And so you could do that in any one of those branches. You gain favor because of your military exploits or your mercantile.
Exactly.
And do you expect, I don't know how it worked out in Roblox, but obviously once you get someone to the top of the hierarchy, is there sometimes infighting that develops, almost civil war, if they're not happy with who's at the top or something?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That happens in the Roblox game. And so there's a ton of things. We have something called faction stability in the Roblox game. So it's this metric and it's probably not going to work exactly like this in the Steam game, but essentially there's a bunch of metrics to see how well your kingdom is doing. If your kingdom starts to do bad, you're eligible to be betrayed. So someone could coup you if it gets bad enough. They could start a rebellion, or eventually, if it's really bad, there's an election, which obviously elections weren't super common back there, especially in medieval times. But that's more of a mechanic to ensure that leaders, like competent leaders, can keep running factions, because that's so important. And that comes to another point, which, is extremely important. Is like, you never want to sacrifice fun for realism. This isn't a documentary, it's a game. So you do have to include elements like that. And that's why it's not like, if you were to make a perfect feudal simulator, you'd be like walking all the time. Like no one's going to be playing that, right? So you have to immerse the player in the feudal world. And you make sacrifices to the realism where fun needs to come in, but never at the cost of trying to display an inauthentic world. We want to display an authentic world. I prefer that word much more to accurate, because accurate is such a hard term to nail down. We talked about that before in the stream. And you can mess little details up. And we obviously will, because there's new information coming out all the time, right? New archaeological dig or something comes out and disproves something else. And so I guarantee we're going to mess some little things up. We're going to try our best not to. But is this an authentic world? Does it feel authentic? Right? That's much more important to our team.
And I know they're like in a game, I guess, like Bannerlord or Crusader Kings, there are mechanics around. If you die, obviously you have an heir that takes over. Have you guys thought around mechanics with regard to death in the game as well? Is there a penalty or?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a question that we're continuing to explore. It's not a permadeath game, but dying has consequences just depending on the circumstance. So if you're in a battle, you can respawn, but the metric that determines how many reinforcements a faction gets, basically respawns, is how much food they have. So if you haven't stockpiled your granary enough and you're being sieged, eventually your soldiers won't be able to keep respawning, right? And same if you're sieging somebody, if you haven't brought enough supplies, you're going to get outlasted by the well-stocked granary and so elements like that are what really affect death. And then you could drop loot in the open world if somebody kills you and stuff. But there are rules and things to make it. Again, it has to be fun. So like you can't just be killed wherever, whenever. And on top of that, we're thinking of assassination features for political leaders and stuff that would just remove them from leadership immediately under certain circumstances. So it's an interesting question. It's not an easy answer, but some of those permadeath mechanics will come in not as permadeath mechanics per se, but as sort of consequence to remove people from power later. So things don't get stagnant. You don't have people just holding on to, because there are limited positions of power. And the last thing you want is somebody just doing nothing up there and just holding it for years and years when they don't deserve it, right? So there need to be counterbalances to make sure the game's still enjoyable and it's not too stagnant. And then when we release updates, we'll release a whole new region, a whole new set of factions. And so if that old world is getting a little stale, well, it's like the new world, right? Like this is a whole new land of opportunity for you to find.
I kind of like that though, because it's not a permadeath. So if you get dethroned and you're in a position of power, now you have your comeback story. You have a whole new story arc to try to make it back to the top.
Absolutely.
Okay, we got a couple questions I want to get to in the chat. Seems like a lot of moving parts. I just heard about it today. Do they have a plan to deal with the games economy like WoW does?
Yeah, we have a huge economy is one of the things that is going to be very similar to the Lionhearts game on Roblox. Something we refined a lot. So there's a gold economy that supplements the favor economy. So it's more of a mid and late game thing you participate in, but it's sort of, forgive the term, it's a bit of a lubricant for the system. So it's an extra motivation. It's an extra way to do things. The economy is actually, it doesn't hyperinflate. So the gold has like a real value because the gold isn't injected in the same way it usually is. So you don't just get like a gold printer necessarily. The gold has to be minted. And then it can be earned. So the person minting it, they can buy it with dollars, which actually is what secures it from not getting hyperinflated. But most people don't do that. They earn it. So that's how it comes into the economy. And then it cycles through the faction treasury. They'll do weekly pay. So you have like competitive elements basically where a faction might pay you more than another faction. Oh, I'm going to leave this faction. That faction's paying me twice as much, right? Or you're a tradesman. It's like, I'm going to go sell in this city because they're, the economy, the rates are way better over there. And that is all player driven. It's not something we're setting up. We're just allowing the players have the variables. And as far as like supply and demand, it's all real.
Awesome. Okay. We got another game related question a while back. Kohlton, what made you decide to use Unreal Engine for the new game over Unity?
Yeah, great question. I think ultimately one of the biggest things was Unity. They were having some issues with some developer outreach and stuff that were kind of scaring us about a year ago. They had a bit of a controversy, and I'm just a big fan of what Epic Games does. Like, I just think they have an ethical monetization strategy. They do a lot of support for their developers. They don't even charge you unless your game makes like $1 million. They won't even charge you a cent. So they just seem to be more developer friendly at the moment. Unity is also a great platform, and I'm sure you could make this game on there. But at the end of the day, we just thought Unreal was a little bit better.
It looks beautiful from what I've seen.
Visually, it's also, I think it's the best.
Okay, I had one that's not really about the game, but it's a question for you. Question for Kohlton: was the sacking of Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade the catalyst for the decline of the Byzantine Empire, or were there greater factors for its decline?
I hope you guys have 2 hours for me to answer that. No, it definitely is something people point to. Personally, I think it was a major catalyst, but the empire was already in decline for a long time. You also have like the Battle of Manzikert, was pretty embarrassing, and they just were taking a lot of L's, and this one hurt a lot, and it definitely played a major role, in my opinion, to destabilizing the entire empire. The empire basically dissolved. It became like the Latin Empire of Constantinople. It was controlled by Crusaders for a brief period after the Fourth Crusade, before it was retaken by actual Eastern Romans. But yeah, I think it contributed quite a bit. It's a tragic event if you're a fan of the Byzantine Empire, if you're a fan of the Eastern Romans. It's kind of like a meme, like don't mention, like in the Eastern Roman Discord, like for the Roblox game, if you like come in there talking about 1204 sack of Constantinople, you get a lot of tears.
You're banned.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, exactly. So obviously the Turks and the cannons, and that's what ultimately did it. But like what led up to that moment, 1204 is maybe at the top of the list if there's a single event. But I'm not a Byzantine or an Eastern Roman historian. It's actually something that I need to do more research on. I'm doing more research on now. But as far as the Crusades are concerned, that's like, I mean, I could kind of rant about this for a minute. I guess I will for a sec. Like the Second Crusade is actually kind of also has that vibe as the fourth one. The Second Crusade, it just like didn't need to happen. They, they had the Holy Land. They're like, let's attack our ally. Like Damascus is our ally. Let's attack them. And then they drove their ally to become friends with their biggest enemy, Nuruddin. And then it totally emboldened Nuruddin, and it was just a total massive mistake. And it's just like an unforced error. So the First Crusade and the Third Crusade are, from the perspective of the Crusaders, definitely more successful. Second and the Fourth, definitely, like second's like, what are you even doing? It's totally unnecessary.
Just keep attacking your allies.
Yeah.
Which I feel like will happen in your game as well.
No, it does. Like people do dumb stuff, So that's about it. Having it player run is basically the most historical way to do it, because people are going to make stupid decisions.
Honestly, I like that too, because there's stuff that I do in video games where I'm like, you shouldn't do this, but it'll be so much more fun. Like if I'm playing Bannerlord or something, like I'm going to lose most of my army if I go into this battle, but damn, I might be able to beat these guys. And you go ahead and do it. And you're like, in real life, don't do this, but here you got to.
I'm wondering.
Sometimes I'll encourage the leaders when it's like a little stale. I won't tell them or like force them, but like, guys, where's your fighting spirit? Come on, like,
why are you so
you should
loyal
hate these guys? Go to war. Come on. And I'll it's just funny because like I don't have time to like pay attention to the day-to-day of faction politics. It's super like you could have a YouTube video released every day talking about like what's going on in the game, like from the drama standpoint. But sometimes I'll go in there and be like, man, France, aren't you upset that England is like, they're doing so much better than you? And like, wouldn't it be nice to go show them who's boss and stuff, stuff like that. And it's all just fun, man. And it's really cool to see, because no matter what I come up with or ideas I have, the players always come up with better ones, and they do things that I wouldn't have imagined, and that's really the best part of it.
I was actually wondering, are you hoping the community would start like their own wiki or something where they're keeping track of different ages, battles, conflicts, and stuff as well?
Yeah, I mean, the players record the history themselves, and on top of that, we're we'd love to work with YouTubers, and we have a couple in mind that like we're like, hey, it'd be really cool if we did like a weekly news segment where we just like chronicled what was happening.
Mm.
But I hope that just happens naturally. Like I just hope that, because if we have to force something like that, maybe it's not interesting enough. But like if it's really interesting, people will find the story and they'll report it. And that's really the cool element of what we're doing here is ultimately players are calling the shots. Players are making the decisions. And that means you can make the decision. Like you can go in and make a big impact. Now, you might not become the king, but you might say something to the king that is very impactful. You might win a battle because you're so talented, right? So there's a lot of elements like that allow you to make an impact.
Yeah, someone says there's a wiki on the Roblox game, just not including every single battle because that would take a team of 100 people to write.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
That's cool. The Roblox too, like you're saying, like you kind of, I don't know if you would say you outgrew Roblox, but there's a tone to it that you're like, this almost feels more like a Steam game. And I started laughing a few times during the stream because I just imagine like some 7-year-old kid in a car seat, like sieging Jerusalem on his mom's iPad or something.
Yeah, we don't have a ton of players that are actually under 10. I don't think they can even play technically because of our age rating. But we did add mobile for better or worse because we thought it'd be good for Roblox at the time. But like, so you could go on your iPad and siege Constantinople if you want. I don't necessarily recommend it as good as a PC experience.
I remember. I was going to say, I remember in high school, I joined this Minecraft PvP server with some friends, and this is kind of going back to the history thing. I just remember going on it, and everyone, like every now and then, someone would mention the Purge, like they're referencing something from the past. I'm like, right. What is the Purge? And I guess it was when there was a bunch of different factions in secret, other ones colluded to create an ultimate faction. Yep. So they backstabbed all their allies and then created their own unified.
That's Tuesday on the Roblox game. That's
that sounds awesome.
Oh man, I promise anybody listening, you'll have fun playing the Roblox game. You just got to get into the community.
How many players do you?
Well, like we average like 30 to a couple hundred at any time. So nothing super big, especially on Roblox. But again, when these big wars happen, we get battles with hundreds of people.
That's awesome.
So when the wars happen, it definitely spikes up. We just made the game free. It cost like $1 before. We made the game free to promote the Kickstarter. So it's a good time to try. And honestly, guys, whatever you can do to help support our Kickstarter, we've got a few more days left, but there's tons of really awesome rewards on there for this new game that are exclusive that really help us out as indie devs making this thing come true. So we're getting close to our minimum goal. If you're listening and this is interesting, at least a couple dollars, even if you don't have much, even $2 helps get our backer count up. You can always up it later, but do take some time to look through our pledges because they're like, when people come and pledge, they pledge a lot because they're like, oh my God, the rewards are so good. But you don't have to. You could still just pledge a little bit if you want. Yeah.
Is I was looking, it was like 231 backers and $79,000. So you're shooting for 100,000. What's the next award that you're approaching here? You have one for 80,000?
Well, no. So we got to reach our minimum of 100. That'll allow us to get Lionhearts Coliseum, which is basically going to be just a combat simulation. And our $200,000 goal, we can do a pre-alpha. So you'll start actually seeing some of the minimum viable product elements of this game gaining favor and stuff. And we have more stretch goals down the way. So we're just going to keep chipping away at this, keep helping get community funding, keep helping getting community support. But right now is our big push. So if we can rate, once we reach our minimum goal, Kickstarter pushes you a lot more. So there's a chance we could, 4 or 5x what we've raised. And that's really huge because that's when we could start delivering really awesome things sooner and better than we could otherwise. So every little bit helps, guys. And if you can't donate, just sharing it, just telling a friend, if you know a buddy who would be interested in this, a lot of people are sick of AAA and they want to help indie. Now's the time. This is what we're doing. So we really appreciate any of the support that you guys can give.
Yeah. And this is what I love about sort of Unreal Engine being available to so many other smaller indie groups. And I guess Unity would probably be the same, but it's like, there are kind of these niche ideas that what you've talked about today, it's like it sounds so cool to so many people, but like you can't go pitch that to a AAA studio and expect them to pour, you know,
Yeah.
$10 million into it or something. But you can end up making this, you know, with the time, with a dedicated team and people who are passionate about it, and a Kickstarter like this, you can end up making these really cool things that when Joe and I were growing up, we used to say things like, how cool would it be if there's a game, but in a massive battle, there's no NPCs, everybody's online. And we're like, nobody will make that. And like, you know, so
We're doing
now
it.
now we're approaching it, and it's,
Yeah.
you know, like you said, there's a lot of like fantasy MMOs. So I'm sure there might be things that are kind of like this, but no AAA studios are going to be like, here's Third Crusade accurate 16 factions. Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, if somebody pointed out that there's something wrong, they're not changing that. But
yeah, and that's why we need support from, you know, like history people like you guys, like, because the medieval genre and like the historical side, like that's our bread and butter, and those are the people who are really going to support this. And you're right, AAA doesn't really care about this stuff. And, you know, not to diss on like my colleagues and stuff, but like, you're right, this game is not going to be made any other way. It's going to be through, and we've been doing this for 10 years. I don't think there's another team on the planet that could pull this off. It's very, you know, it's very complicated. There's a lot of moving parts, and we've gone through that experience. We've done the trial and error. And what I recommend is, like, if you guys aren't convinced, go look at our Kickstarter page, scroll through, see what we've done, see our story. And if you're not convinced, at least put a couple bucks in. You know, you close it out, and maybe you'll see us in a few years when it's released, right? But we appreciate it either way, and you know, we just appreciate everybody coming out and the support we've gotten. And you can always wish list us on Steam for free and play our demo for free. And you know, we invite you to do so. Listen to our awesome music that we've got on the page. It's like really epic. We have an awesome music composer, and yeah, guys, whatever support you can give, we appreciate it a ton.
Yeah, this is actually just looking over the Steam page and the Kickstarter. It's so evident that this is so far from being like, it's the tone I get from a lot of AAA games nowadays is they're kind of trying to curry the favor of the shareholders. So games get expedited, games come out, they're crappy. There's no passion behind them anymore. And just talking to you right now and looking at everything, you can tell like there's something there. There's like, it's the same thing that Chris and I love about history. There's this passion, there's this dedication that like, I'm going to spend my life doing this. I'll make this perfect. So I love seeing it.
Yeah, and you said you've been working on it for 10 years, and the idea came to you in 2009. A lot of these AAA games, even like historical ones, I love some of the Assassin's Creed. I think some of them aren't as good. But then you look at like the production time for that, and you're like, yeah, they had like 2 years to make this entire game, basically. And it was like one half of one dev team. And it's like, I feel like you guys are just honing in on, you're releasing it when it's right to release, and you have everything nailed.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're going to, you know, not going to take too long, hopefully, but we'll take the time it needs to get it right. And, you know, we're going to keep releasing alphas and betas and demos and previews every step of the way. So, an investment today is, you know, it's an investment in the future, but there's also things you can go do now. And we've got a ton of content over the last 10 years you can enjoy now. So you're not just supporting our future products, you're also supporting us for what we've done and how we've gotten here. And if that's not enough evidence and proof, then it'd be hard to find somebody else besides our team that's put more time into a project like this.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're going to wrap up here. You guys can go play the demo on Steam right now. You can go play on Roblox if you want more of the experience of, I guess, what the core game is like, the base of the game. And then please check out that Kickstarter. It's right at the top of the description. And, you know, even if you're going and you don't think you're in the mood to donate today, it is really cool just to look through, scroll through, see the story, some more of what the game is like. And again, I'm not affiliated. I don't get anything from this, but it was just really cool. And maybe it'll change your mind and you'll contribute something to help make this a reality. Kohlton, thank you for jumping on today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And hope we be in touch. And thank you to everybody watching.
All right. Bye.